I am no acquaintance of M. de Villefort's, answered Morel, but I was of Madame de Saint Méran. Albert came up to them at this moment with Franz. The time and place are but ill-suited for an introduction, said Albert, but we are not superstitious. M. Morel, allow me to present to you M. Franz d'Épinay, a delightful traveling companion, with whom I made the tour of Italy. My dear Franz, M. Maximilian Morel, an excellent friend I have acquired in your absence, and whose name you will hear me mention every time I make any allusion to affection, wit, or amiability. Morel hesitated for a moment. He feared it would be hypocritical to accost in a friendly manner the man whom he was tacitly opposing, but his oath and the gravity of the circumstances recurred to his memory. He struggled to conceal his emotion and bowed to Franz. Mademoiselle de Villefort is in deep sorrow, is she not? Said Debray to Franz. Extremely, replied he, she looked so pale this morning, I scarcely knew her. These apparently simple words pierced Morel to the heart. This man had seen Valentine, and spoken to her. The young and high-spirited officer required all his strength of mind to resist breaking his oath. He took the arm of Chateau Renaud, and turned towards the vault, where the attendants had already placed the two coffins. This is a magnificent habitation, said Beauchamp, looking towards the mausoleum, a summer and winter palace. You will, in turn, enter it, my dear d'Épinay, for you will soon be numbered as one of the family. I, as a philosopher, should like a little country house, a cottage down there under the trees, without so many freestones over my poor body. In dying, I will say to those around me what Voltaire wrote to Piron. Eo Rus, and all will be over. But come, Franz, take courage, your wife is an heiress. Indeed, Beauchamp, you are unbearable. Politics has made you laugh at everything, and political men have made you disbelieve everything. But when you have the honor of associating with ordinary men, and the pleasure of leaving politics for a moment, try to find your affectionate heart, which you leave with your stick when you go to the chamber. But tell me, said Beauchamp, what is life? Is it not a hall in death's anteroom? I am prejudiced against Beecham, said Albert, drawing Franz away, and leaving the former to finish his philosophical dissertation with Debray. The Villefort vault formed a square of white stones, about 20 feet high. An interior partition separated the two families, and each apartment had its entrance door. Here were not, as in other tombs, ignoble drawers, one above another, where thrift bestows its dead and labels them like specimens in a museum. All that was visible within the bronze gates was a gloomy-looking room, separated by a wall from the vault itself. The two doors before mentioned were in the middle of this wall, and enclosed the Villefort and Saint Maron coffins. Their grief might freely expend itself without being disturbed by the trifling loungers who came from a picnic party to visit Père Lachaise, or by lovers who make it their rendezvous. The two coffins were placed on trestles previously prepared for their reception in the right-hand crypt belonging to the Saint Maron family. Villefort, Franz, and a few near relatives alone entered the sanctuary. As the religious ceremonies had all been performed at the door, and there was no address given, the party all separated. Chateau Renaud, Albert, and Morel went one way, and Debray and Beecham the other. Franz remained with M. De Villefort. At the gate of the cemetery, Morel made an excuse to wait. He saw Franz and M. De Villefort get into the same morning coach, and thought this meeting foreboded evil. He then returned to Paris, and although in the same carriage with Chateau Renaud and Albert, he did not hear one word of their conversation. As Franz was about to take leave of M. de Villefort, "When shall I see you again?" said the latter. "At what time you please, sir," replied Franz. "As soon as possible." "I am at your command, sir. Shall we return together?" "If not unpleasant to you." "On the contrary, I shall feel much pleasure." Thus, the future father and son-in-law stepped into the same carriage, and Morel, seeing them pass, became uneasy. Villefort and Franz returned to the Faubourg Saint-Honoré. The procureur, without going to see either his wife or his daughter, went at once to his study, and, offering the young man a chair, "M. d'Épinay," said he, "allow me to remind you at this moment, which is perhaps not so ill-chosen as at first sight may appear, for obedience to the wishes of the departed is the first offering which should be made at their tomb. Allow me then to remind you of the wish expressed by Madame de Saint Méran on her deathbed, that Valentine's wedding might not be deferred. You know the affairs of the deceased are in perfect order, and her will bequeaths to Valentine the entire property of the Saint Méran family. The notary showed me the documents yesterday, which will enable us to draw up the contract immediately. You may call on the notary, M. Deschamps, Place Beauvau, Faubourg Saint-Honoré, and you have my authority to inspect those deeds. Sir, replied M. Depinay, it is not, perhaps, the moment for Mademoiselle Valentine, who is in deep distress, to think of a husband. Indeed, I fear. Valentine will have no greater pleasure than that of fulfilling her grandmother's last injunctions. There will be no obstacle from that quarter, I assure you. In that case, replied Franz, as I shall raise none, you may make arrangements when you please. I have pledged my word, and shall feel pleasure and happiness in adhering to it. Then, said Villefort, nothing further is required. The contract was to have been signed 3 days since. We shall find it all ready, and can sign it today. But the morning? Said Franz, hesitating. Don't be uneasy on that score, replied Villefort. No ceremony will be neglected in my house. Mademoiselle de Villefort may retire during the prescribed 3 months to her estate of Saint Méran, I say hers, for she inherits it today. There, after a few days, if you like, the civil marriage shall be celebrated without pomp or ceremony. Madame de Saint Méran wished her daughter should be married there. When that is over, you, sir, can return to Paris, while your wife passes the time of her mourning with her mother-in-law. As you please, sir, said Franz. Then, replied M. de Villefort, have the kindness to wait half an hour. Valentine shall come down into the drawing-room. I will send for M. Deschamps. We will read and sign the contract before we separate, and this evening Madame de Villefort shall accompany Valentine to her estate, where we will rejoin them in a week. Sir, said Franz, I have one request to make. What is it? I wish Albert de Mercer and Raoul de Chateau Renaud to be present at this signature, you know they are my witnesses. Half an hour will suffice to apprise them. Will you go for them yourself, or shall you send?